Hi, this is Cheryl McQueen, designer with Bello's Designs. Today's tutorial is a fun card that can be used for a graduation card or just for fun. It features a Cardio's torn paper opening stamp, a script background stamp, and a wise old owl. I hope you enjoy trying this tutorial. Here are the supplies I'll be using today. We will use the Lavinia Multifarious Smooth and Supreme paper cardstock, and this one is cut to 4 3/4 inches by 3.5 inches. Then I will be using a piece of cardstock for a frame around the art card. This one is cut to 5 inches by 3 3/4 inches. For the card base, I've just taken an 8.5 by 11 piece of cardstock. I cut that in half, and then I took 1/2 of those pieces of cardstock, folded it in half, and that creates our card base. For our stamps today, we will use the Lavinia Ginger stamp. The little owl, she is LAV 799. We will also use the Inspire word from the Lavinia Balance collection. This one is LAV 816. For the torn hole, this is from the Cardio collection, and this is called Torn Paper Hole. This one is CCSTOR-01. And then to create my background, I have just used an old stamp that I have here that just has some script. There are a lot of options out there for scripts that you can use. For creating some of our work here, we are going to go ahead and use the Lavinia masking sheets. I've used this in a lot of projects. This is a great masking material. We will, for our basic ink, I'm going to use a black, and that is the VersaFine Clair Nocturne. For our color inks, I'll be using Distress inks today. We'll be using brushed corduroy, scorched timber, and walnut stain. I'm also going to be using a stamping platform. That way, if we need to restamp any of our images to get a really clear, sharp image, we'll have that where we can be assured that it's not going to be off balance or off line. To do our work on the card, we will be using a blending brush, as well as a paintbrush and some water. I will use a painting technique for the torn edges. We'll also use some art markers, and I will be using a Sharpie or a black art marker as well, because I like to define the outer edge of my word that I have down here at the bottom. You might also want to have a pair of scissors on hand so that you can use these to cut out your masking sheet. And I went ahead and used a little card, a little kind of tag punch that I have, but you can just always cut it in a rectangular shape or however you like to do it for your little word tag there. You will want to have on hand some kind of adhesive, either a running tape or a glue that you can use to put your card together. I also went ahead and grabbed a little sheet of dimensionals because I do have my little Inspire word popped up just a little bit there. All right. The only other thing that I like to just have on hand for different little things is little scrap pieces of paper. But this one I actually used to create my little tag there. I wanted the colors to blend, so I used some of the inks that we're going to be using today. So if you have a little scrap of cardstock on hand as well, you'll want to have that. All right, let's get started working on our project. Okay, so to start out our project, I am just going to take my basic cardstock piece, the Multifarious. Let's pull that out here. Move my sample aside. And what we're going to want to do starting out is just very basic. We're going to take our brushed corduroy and a blending brush, and we're just going to smooth that all over the entire surface. Now when I do that, I'm not going to try and make it all smooth because we're looking for a distressed look. So as you're doing this, just take your brush and blend completely over your entire surface of your card, and don't worry about whether it's even or not. In fact, it's actually desirable to have some spots that are darker than others. Okay, so now that we have done that, and as I said, it doesn't look like it's looks very nice, but that's the intent that we want, is for it to look distressed. So no even brushing all over the cardstock to make it look all smooth, because that is actually not what we want for this particular card. Okay, so now what we're going to do is to pull out our stamping platform. We're going to place our card onto the stamping platform. And then we're going to get out our Cardio torn paper hole. Just place that and decide exactly which side you want up. It really doesn't matter. I think this is the way I usually like to do that particular thing. So just place your stamp where you want it to be and ink it up. All right, so we get a nice image there. Go ahead and pull that up, and then just grab a sheet of your Lavinia masking sheets. And you will notice that your masking sheet has a plastic side and a paper side. So what you're going to want is the paper side. Lay that down, and let's see if that's lined up about that. Move that down just a little bit. What we're going to do is we're actually going to re-stamp our image. And you'll notice that I have a lot of room around the outside. That's so that I will have the cardstock covered up when I'm ready to do the stamping of the owl, so we don't get any extra thing out where we don't want on the outside of the hole. So I'm just going to stamp this up very quickly and stamp that down onto my paper. So we'll take that out. I will trim it down. Now it does take a minute or two for it to kind of soak in, so don't touch it too much right at the beginning. Give it just a minute or two to soak in, or if you've got a heat tool, you can kind of dry that up a little bit. I've just found that this masking sheet paper sometimes will smear right after it's just been stamped. So what we're going to do now is we are going to cut out this circle. And the way I want to do that is I'm going to come to the edge of one of my little paper tears here, because I'm going to be using both parts. Normally, if I don't use the interior part, then I'm not going to worry too much about if I cut that part, but I'm going to actually be using both parts of the mask. So let's get the little start there. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut out the rest of this off camera so that you don't have to watch me cut it out. And then we will move on from there. Okay, so I'm back now, and I have cut out my centerpiece. So what you will see is I cut this piece out right here. I'm saving both pieces because I'm going to use both pieces. Now, this sometimes is a little difficult to cut out your center part just by cutting it out without an easy way to get in. So you can always cut into an edge right here and then cut out your center. It's just that when we place this down, you'll need to make sure that you kind of close that gap, and you'll kind of see what I'm talking about when we get started. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to bring our stamped piece back. We're going to take that little piece, the center part that we cut out from our mask. You'll see that little plastic piece on the back that allows you to be able to use this again if you'd like to for another project. And we're going to peel this apart. It's kind of hard to see my little plastic piece there, but I'm going to pull that apart. Now we're going to line this up and mask out that little center part. And get that lined up. And the reason that I am doing this is because I am going to add the color now for the outside to get a little bit more distressing, and I don't want my inside part. I did go back in later on and just do some touches with the paintbrush, but I basically don't want to do the same thing for the background of my hole as I do for the background of the rest of my card. So now at this point in time, we will add some other colors. So I'm going to use first the walnut stain. Now with the walnut stain, don't use a very heavy hand, and you're just literally just going to dash some of this color around. Nothing real solid, just kind of dash it around. What we're doing again is trying to create our old and distressed looking paper background here. Okay, so I've just kind of put just a few little dashes here and there, just to kind of give that darkness. Now we're going to go and do the exact same thing with our scorched timber. Scorched timber is a little bit darker, blacker color, I guess you could say. Let me find here's my little brush for scorched timber. And again, just dash in some marks, some areas. You can blend a little bit if you'd like, but the point here is for it to be all different colors and markings so that we can give that look of the distressed and aged paper. All right, so that's basically all you're going to do. Just kind of give it that little bit of really interesting background color. Now, with this, we now want to add just a tiny little bit more distressing. And to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my water bottle. I've got this little distress sprayer. And I'm just going to spritz it across the entire card. Let it sit for just a second. And you can do it slow to get some big spots and faster to get some smaller spots. As that sits for just a minute, what it's going to do with the distress ink is when I dab it with my paper towel, this actually removes some of the ink, and it gives us that really, really cool distressed look and aged look. Okay. So now at this point we can go ahead and remove this little center sheet. So as you can see, I've got a little bit of a different look in the background behind the torn hole paper. I didn't want it to look all the same, and that's the reason that I didn't do my darker colors in that hole as well. So now we're ready to use the outer edge. So we're going to take this outer edge, peel off the back like we did with the other piece, and again line it up over our pre-stamped area on our art card. Okay, lay that down, smooth that over, and now we're ready to stamp our owl. So I'm going to grab Ginger here. Now, Ginger normally looks like this, but I'm actually going to turn her so that she'll look like this inside my torn hole. So I'm going to place her centered in that hole. There we go. Again, we'll just ink her up. And press down. I try to hold it down for just a moment to get my paper a chance, my art card, to absorb all the ink. And there we go. It looks like get just a little more pressure on her eyes. That's the more solid part of the stamp, so sometimes it either takes a little more ink or just a little more pressure. I think I'm going to go ahead and give just a little more ink on those eyes. There we go. Just a little more ink. Ah, there we go. And now we've got a nice solid image. Alright, so now we can go ahead and remove our masking sheet. Set that aside in case we want to use that again on another card project. And we will peel this off of our stamping platform. And we're ready to go ahead and add just a little bit of color and finishing touches. Okay, so now we want to put in our background words. Now you can do this earlier on if you want to, either way that you prefer, while you already have this background piece on. But I'm going to go ahead and take this background piece, stick it back down to cover up my owl that I've already stamped, because I don't want the words to go in the background in the hole. So now I'm going to take this stamp, ink it up, and I'm going to actually grab a little piece of scrap paper, set that down so I don't get my work surface all covered with ink. And then I'm going to take my script words, my script stamp, make sure I can get this lined up so my script words are pretty nice and straight. And I'm just going to lay that down, and again do some good pressure. And I actually need to get one that's a clear stamp so that if I ever wanted to redo a second stamping, I could. That's the only problem that I found. I love a lot of my wooden stamps, but I got one shot to get the image that I want. So again, I'm just going to hold that and press down. Make sure I get a good solid image. All right. Set that aside. And now again we can peel off that little centerpiece. And there we've got our nice little script, and it's not covering up our owl or our background. So what I want to do at this point is go ahead and just paint and give a little bit of definition to my rolled back pieces where the torn hole is. I'm actually going to slide this over just a little bit so you can see my little work area. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that paintbrush. See what I did with that paintbrush. Yeah, it was here a second ago. There it is. All right, we're going to take the paintbrush and we're going to start out with our walnut stain. And I'm just going to put a little bit of walnut stain right down there on my work surface. Spritz a little bit of water on it. And then I'm going to use the paintbrush to pick up that ink and just go over where that torn paper appears to be rolled up. And at this point, I'm just covering the entire surface of the rolled up paper. Alright, so once we've got that down, we want to go ahead and darken it up just a little bit, and that's where our scorched timber is going to come in. Do the same process, grab the scorched timber, put some of that down. It's a nice dark color. Add just a little bit of water. And then we're going to pick up some of that color. And the nice thing about the stamp is it has these little areas that are highlighted or low lighted, if you actually want to call it that, but it shows where the shadows are. So we're just going to take our paintbrush and go over those little areas where the stamp shows the shadows. And that's just going to give it a little more dimension. Okay, so there we go. Gives us just a little bit more. Looks like he's actually back behind the rolled paper there. Okay, now, like I said, if you want to add like a little bit of interest to what he's got behind him, kind of wipe your brush off so that you just got tiny little bits on there. And that's actually even still too much. So I'm going to add a little more water right here to my work surface. And I'm just going to kind of do a few little dashes and kind of doubles, just to kind of give a little bit of interest back there. Like I said, I don't want a whole lot. If I feel like I've got too much, I can always dab it up or add a little bit more water, smooth it out just a little bit. Okay, this is optional. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. If you like the way it looks all solid, you can do that too. Okay. So now the last thing that we need to do on coloring is to get our art markers out and color in our owl. I just chose some light colors. These are actually, they call them warm grays. They look brownish to me, but it's called a warm gray in this particular brand of marker. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to color in his whole body. And then I'm going to go back in and highlight some of the feathers with a darker color. Okay, so as you saw, what I did was I did the lighter color for all of the feathers on the outside and on his wing here. I made the belly feathers and the feathers around his face to be just a little bit darker. And then I took some orange and highlighted his beak in the orange and a little bit of yellow for the eyes. Okay, so now we are ready to go ahead and do the little tag that we put down at the bottom. Here's how our example looks. So what I'm going to do is, remember we talked about a scrap piece of paper, so here's a little scrap piece of cardstock that I used to cut out my original one. And I actually had started to work on doing another place, but let me go ahead and show you what I did to do that color. I took my brush corduroy and just put a nice base down. And just kind of brushed it on there to do that. Now, then I wanted to go ahead and add just a little bit of the dark color, and then so this is the walnut stain. And you might have enough color on your brush left over that you might not have to dip some into your walnut stain. I might do just a tiny little bit more. Just add a little bit of that darker color. And the reason I do this is I want the same colors that I had used in the entire project there. So just put some in to get it to be just a color that matches pretty well. Now we're going to go ahead and pull out our stamping platform. Place this on our stamping platform. And pull out our Inspire word. I like this word. I feel like this card, the title that I gave the card was that words are inspiration. Wise words are inspiration. So that's why I decided to use the Inspire word. I think, that, again, that's kind of a great thing when you want to give that to the graduate. Give them a nice little card. Tell them that their words can be inspiration. Alright, so we'll stamp that down. Okay, now, and at this point you can either do like I did. I had a little tag punch that I decided to use, or you can just cut it to be a rectangle, or if you've got another tag shape that you really like. Let me kind of cut that down just a little bit so my punch will fit in there. And then I'm just going to fit my word right there on the inside of my punch. And punch that out. Now, I like to give mine a little bit of definition. So by taking a Sharpie or a black art marker or something like that, I just take that pen and kind of just rub it right along the edge to get just a kind of a black border. To me, this helps to kind of set it off just a little bit. Alright, and you can kind of see how that makes it jump out a little bit when it's against a lighter background. Okay, so before we put that down, because I like to use the dimensionals, I am going to go ahead and put the card together. So I'm going to take my frame cardstock and my running tape. You can use a paper glue as well. I like to use the running tape on demonstrations because it goes really quickly that way. Alright, and then let's just center that. In that frame. Just like that. And then we will take our card base. And center our framed piece on that card base. Alright, and now for our final thing. You can either make it flat on your card, or like I said, I like to use the little dimensionals. So I'm just going to take some of those little dimensionals and pop them on there. And now just put that centered on the bottom of my card. And there we go. We have our finished product. Thank you so much for watching my video tutorial today. I really love using Ginger the Owl in my projects. I think she just really gives a nice, lovely little effect. And as I said, you can move her a different direction even though her original stamp design is looking sideways. I hope that you will give this project a try. Be sure to check out the tutorials on the design team page at delbellosdesigns.com and look for the great sale prices on all the items on the website. Have a great day.